rose up like a lion.
Tom Trento, Director of the United West, on Monday, September 17th, 2018. Originally, we're going to launch our first show, daily show at the United West, an 18-minute show that would be on each day dealing with our subjects: national security, Israel, defense, homeland security. But yesterday, the United West team, all of Israel, and many people around the world suffered a serious and severe loss of a very, very dear friend, Ari Fuld. And we want to just take some time today. We're completely unscripted here. We got a few of Ari Fuld's friends together in our studio and in the control room. And we're just going to share some thoughts, some reflections, try to draw some lessons from this unique individual's life, and at the end of this, lay down a memorial tribute to a phenomenal guy who believed in God, his family, and his country, and died in a horrendous way, but in a way that should be a lesson for all of us as to the commitment sometimes required when you're in these battles. In our studio, with me at our table, are three dear friends of mine. Right here is Laura Loomer, next to Laura, Dr. Ronnie Wexler, and then we were going to surprise you with Damon being in Florida in our first show, but because of the tragedy yesterday, there's no surprises. Damon Rosen, our former producer for many years, made Aliyah 2 years ago, has come back to help us over the next couple of months with our show. And ironically, he's here today, otherwise you would have been at the funeral yesterday. And in the control room, you'll see in a little bit, is J. Mark Campbell. And again, this is completely unscripted. It happened a little over 24 hours ago. Damon, you were living there. You were involved with Ari on a regular basis. Why don't you just share what happened for those that may have not heard?
What happened is Ari Fuld was at outside of a grocery store in Gush Etzion, which is part of Judea Samaria, which is what the media refers to as the West Bank, or international media, the occupied West Bank, but where Jews have lived for thousands of years. He was standing there after doing some shopping, and a Muslim terrorist was waiting behind him, staring at him for several seconds, almost a minute, and stabbed him in the back 2 times, puncturing his lung. Ari, amazingly, fought back, pulled his gun, fired his weapon after being stabbed twice, and went after the guy, 17-year-old terrorist from a neighboring Arab town, went after him, as well as a security guard and another citizen. They shot the assailant several times, minor wounds. He got transported to an Israeli hospital where he will make a full recovery. And our friend Ari is dead.
A couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Jerusalem Jane, who's a basket case today, is very, very close to Ari. Jerusalem Jane calls me up one day and says, "Tom, you got to meet this guy. This is Tom Trento in Israel. You and him are going to he's an amazing guy." And our next trip out there with you, Ron, we met him and we clicked with everybody with the United West. You met him for the first time this past trip.
Yeah, we were actually on the Hill the day of the embassy move, overlooking the new embassy in Jerusalem, and I showed up with a few people. There were a lot of people with Trump flags, Israeli flags, and everybody was just very happy to be there. And I met him, and he knew who I was, and we were
Everybody
introduced.
knows who you are, Laura.
We were introduced, and just a really great guy. I mean, while the embassy, the official ceremony was taking place, there were all these leftists and Palestinian protesters on the Hill, and Ari, armed with facts and just his passion and love for America and Israel, was there slaying everybody, right? And he was so animated and was just the center of attention for all the reporters there. They all just zoomed their cameras on him because, he was
He's
so
the man.
passionate. And it's just so tragic because I remember one of our last nights in Israel, we had dinner. He took us to the smokehouse.
Hang on to that. I want you to tell that story later.
Yeah.
Because then he took you to the backwoods, the back roads into a Muslim community right by the Temple Mount. I want to hear that story a little later. Bron, you're an Israeli, and Ari, 45 years old, born in the United States, born in New York, and then made Aliyah when he was about 19 or 20. What is, when you saw the story yesterday, and you spent a lot of time with Ari, what struck you when you saw his name dead?
Well, obviously, like all of us, I was devastated. I was shocked. In the beginning, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You called me actually early in the morning. In my view, Ari was a real man. He was the salt of the earth. He was in Israel, the type of a man that had an ideology and didn't just talk the talk, but walk the walk. He decided to move himself and family to Samaria, live near Hebron. He and I had many conversations about living in Efrat. That's the name of the city he lived in. He meant what he said and said what he meant. There was nothing in between. The man was real. He was a real man, and he was a fighter. The fact that he actually went after the assailant and tried to cut him down, I don't know if he hit or not, but it tells you a little bit about who Ari was. Ari was the man. Ari was what we need in Israel. As an Israeli, I feel sometimes that we Israelis do what we need to do. But to expect somebody from the United States of America to come to Israel and share with us what we feel that it is our obligation, it's something else. I cherish the man, and I only hope that we can all share and take care of his family and make sure that they've been taken care of.
Yeah, he has a dear wife and 4 kids. And all of us watched the funeral service last night. The Jewish tradition, you have to be buried within 24 hours. And there were, how many, Damon, 2 or 3 people at the funeral last night?
You had 2,000 or 3,000 in a room for probably a third of that.
It was immense.
And there were more outside.
Thousands of people.
He received praises from Netanyahu, David Friedman. I mean, just all of Israel is really outpouring their support and their condolences and outrage over what has happened. And I was watching the live stream, and I was traveling, and so I didn't get to watch all of it at the same time because it was taking place while I was switching planes. But when I clicked the live stream, there were 4,000 people watching from all around the world. So I'm sure that was just the beginning of when the live stream...
And there were several live streams of it.
Well, there were several, so that was just one live stream. There were 4,000 at one moment. Who knows how many more, but all over Twitter, all around the world. I mean, so many Jewish leaders, people. I mean, I was at a conference in St. Louis, and there were a few Jewish people there. I mean, just news of his death spread like wildfire all over.
Yeah, and he's not an elected official. He wasn't an elected official. He was an American who made Aliyah. He went up to Jerusalem, moved there. But then, Ron, I want you to comment on the fact that CNN, when they reported on his death, said a settler living in the occupied territory in the West Bank was killed by an assailant.
Well,
deconstruct that for us. What are they trying to say?
Everything in certain media has priority to make sure that the world gets wrong understanding about Samaria, Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria is a part of Israel, was always a part of Israel before Israel became a state under the rules of the United Nations. That was always a part of Israel. So when after the 67 war in 1967, Jews started to settle again in their land, that became an issue for the world to say that we live in an occupied area. It's as occupied area as America is occupying now Texas or New Mexico or California. There's no such thing. People always lived in I don't want to call it West Bank because it's not the West Bank, it's the West Bank of the Jordan River. It's not a territorial area that we recognize as anything. It's Judea and Samaria, it's a part of Israel. So that's wrong. And for CNN or any other of the news to take over and to politicize it in one way or another and make it occupied territory is wrong. And I know Ari knew it very well.
Not only did he know it, but he took his family and brought them into that area to make what kind of statement, David? You knew him very well.
Well, I know Ari a few years. You know, I met him right after I made Aliyah 2.5 years ago. And Ari was the master at explaining to people how Judea and Samaria is
This is
Israel.
what you were talking about.
Yes.
Arguer, debater.
No leftist could win a debate against Ari. It was absolutely impossible to win a debate against Ari because he was so prepared psychologically, mentally, and historically, biblically. No one, and his energy, you were not going to defeat Ari because his facts were facts, and the opposition likes to manipulate the facts. They like to, there's the pro-Palestinian bent in the media. That's, I don't think that's news to anyone. But Ari was just an amazing guy because he was a religious Zionist. That's Date Leumim. Now, but he got along with absolutely everyone. You could take someone as non-religious, secular as me, all the way to the ultra-Orthodox black hat Haredis, and have a conversation. And can I tell you one of the most interesting stories I had?
Yeah, we're just kind of, and look, I think it's very important. We all cried yesterday. It was a very, very difficult day for those who knew him. But he's the kind of guy that would say, stop crying, come on, get on with life. And I think our time together here is to celebrate what he accomplished and to let that serve as a motivation for what we need to accomplish.
One day, I don't know, I think it was earlier this year, maybe late last year, it was winter, very cold in Jerusalem, and I met Ari at the Kotel, the Western Wall. And because that was his favorite place. He loved to do live videos on Facebook from the Kotel, and it's like probably close to midnight, winter, cold. There were a lot of ultra-Orthodox yeshiva kids right around military age. The way it works, for those of you that don't know in Israel, a lot of the ultra-Orthodox get exempt from joining the army.
And Ari put 20-something years.
20-something, yeah, over 20 years. Now, Ari, who is a religious guy, make no bones about it, a religious guy for an hour, over an hour, was debating with these yeshiva kids who were not going to go to the army, why it does not go against the Jewish religion, why they should feel obligated to serve their country. And after a little while, I could see the looks on some of these kids' faces, the self-doubt of why they're not serving their country. Ari put some thoughts in those kids' heads that night that for 20 years they believed what they believed, and I saw Ari change. Had to be 8 or 10 kids there. Maybe 1 or 2 were still staunchly. Some, it was amazing to see one guy change so many minds in an hour.
At the same Kotel, he would debate with leftists or whomever about whose mountain that was. And they go, well, look, the dome is up there, and the Muslims have it, and they control it. And you know what how he would respond? Standing by the wall, he goes, what's underneath this dome? What is this wall doing? Is the wall on top of the dome, or is it underneath the dome? And obviously, the wall's below the dome. It came before the dome. We were here before the dome was ever here. Just simple stuff like that. He was in the Army for 22, 23 years in the reserves. There's a story of him.
Well, he was active.
And now, yeah.
Reserves.
And there's a story of the Second Lebanese War. He was, 2006, he was called with a few guys to go pick up some of the dead soldiers. So he put his backpack down under a tree, and the guys went, and they had a tough time. They got him back, but on the way back, mortars were flying all over. A mortar was a direct hit on his backpack where he would have been sitting. He read that as a message from God that life is very, very short, and I need to do as much as I can each and every day for my country, Israel.
He did it.
And that's when he changed his whole life, the direction he was going after he served, and said, I got to be Hasbara. Ron, what's Hasbara?
Hasbara is a way to bring knowledge to the public. Is explaining and have a better understanding of the issues. I think Ari, not only that lived by conviction, but he had a tremendous ability to take a complicated situation and simplify it. And I think that was his biggest asset. I think that was a gift that he had. Also, I think Avi was a man that put other people ahead of himself. I think that whenever you ask, I asked, you asked Ari to do anything, it was never, I may not have the time.
Oh, no.
It was never, I can't. It was never, it may or may not take place. It always was, yes. It reminds me of the people of Israel, the Jewish people in Sinai, when God told them, will you accept the commandments? And they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen, meaning that we'll take it and then we will learn what it is. It doesn't matter. And to Ari, it was the same thing. I brought him to speak to many people that I brought with me to Israel. We sat at dinners, complete evenings, and discussed different things. As I said before on this program, the expectation is always for me and my Israeli friends, but to expect it from somebody who comes with ideology, straightforward to Israel, and take charge and become really a symbol to Israelis, how to live their lives and how to protect the land, Eretz. That's what we live by, and he was the epitome of it.
Yeah, our last trip there, Laura, with Judge Janine on the last day, Ari was with us several times during the trip, but the last day he came in and we let him speak. You know, we shared a bunch of stuff. Then he met with Janine, Judge Janine. I actually contacted her, and she was very, very sad about the whole thing. But the important thought about Ari is what we can take from his life. I think that's critically important. Mark, back there, are you able to get on the camera once you're back there to say something about Ari? Because you almost got in a fight with him over our last dinner. The last dinner.
That is true. That is true. I almost
Tell
did.
that story, will you?
1 second.
Okay. Ari had organized this phenomenal dinner for us after we completed our trip with Judge Janine, and we usually take a few days and the team goes and relax. And there's this smokehouse. What's the name of it again? Henry's or Harry's or whatever?
Harry.
I don't know, but it's really good.
The
It's very
smokehouse, wasn't it?
I ate way too much.
I don't go to Israel for the food. I go to Italy for the food. But this place was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Is that how you gain 5 pounds
Yes,
every
I
trip?
did,
Is you don't go for the food?
So I go for all the other stuff, the spiritual food, national food. So this a feast of meat, smoked meat, this, everything. Well, it was time to have a doggy bag. And our director over there, tell us that story.
Well, the food was absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was fabulous. I mean, every type of meat you could possibly think of, and they were bringing more. All you had to do was ask for more, and they bring you more, right? And it was just like one after another after another. I mean, we were all chowing, right? And at the end, there's like all this extra meat left over. I mean, like a ton of meat, right? And I'm eyeing this thing because we're in Israel. There's no meat in Israel, anywhere in Israel. You know, I've been like dying for meat for the last 2 weeks. And so I wanted to take some home with me like, in a doggy bag, right? And Tom all of a sudden out of nowhere goes, yeah, Ari, you take it with you. And I'm going, what? You can't let him have all that food? And what's he going to do with all that food? I was mad.
And the reason, Mark, you have how many kids?
Zero.
He's got 4 kids at home, Mark. He's got 4 kids at home. And Ari goes, no, give it to Mark, give it to Mark. I said, no, you're taking it home. Take the food home. He took the food
But
home.
it's crazy the funny
But you
things.
know what else we did that
Well,
night?
hold on.
Well,
But it's
yeah.
crazy the funny things that you remember about people's lives. I mean, like the stupidest things you always remember about people's lives. And well, one thing on a serious note I would like to say though is, this whole attack upon him was quintessential Muslim Arab mentality. The guy lurks in a shadow, stabs him in the back, stalks him, stabs him in the back, then runs away. And the whole Arab community celebrates him as a hero. And what other culture in the world does stabbing someone in the back while you're hiding in a corner lurking and then run away seem as honorable? These people have no honor. There's no honor in this whole thing. But
That's a good point. A very good point. And maybe we'll draw some of those before we
And
close.
I think another thing that's really important to mention about this is just the disgraceful bias in the media, right? They're constantly trying to make the Palestinians appear as if they're victims and that Israel is this apartheid state and that the Muslims are oppressed. Well, tell me one other nation in the world where a Muslim is able to stab a Jew in the back, kill him, run away, get shot, and then be taken care of in a Jewish Israeli hospital, and then receive top-notch medical treatment. He's treated with rights, treated with respect. Everything that he failed to give Ari before stabbing him to death. And show me one other country in the world where they wouldn't have just shot him dead on sight or hung him.
Well,
I could go on all day long as the basis
there's
for
just
that.
there's so much
worldviews.
bias, all right? And that's what really bothers me about this whole thing is that this Muslim terrorist ended up surviving, and then because the Israelis, the Jewish people, actually have a sense of humanity, right?
there's nothing humane about keeping that person alive.
Because
Let me tell you why it's not
His
humane.
family's going to get money.
you're right, and I don't think he should be alive. But my point is that the Jewish people value life, right? And that is the biggest comparison. If you were to ask me, what is the biggest comparison between the Jews and the Muslims or the Israelis and the Palestinians? It's that the Jews have a sense of humanity and a value and a respect for
Well, they
life,
tell you.
and the Muslims
We
don't.
love death
Plain
more
and
than you
simple.
love life.
Let me tell you why it's not humane to keep him alive. I'm going to tell you why it's not humane. It's because the history says this guy is going to go into prison, and in a few years there's going to be a prisoner swap. We'll swap 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 prisoners to get 1 or 2 soldiers or soldiers' corpses back, and this guy is going to go be a terrorist again and probably take another life. And if you look at Yahya Sinwar, who headed Hamas, was part of a prisoner swap.
Yeah.
So there's nothing humane about not putting terrorists to death. And that's one of the things that Ari believed in, was the death penalty for terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of lives would be saved in this world
Absolutely.
if terrorists that were responsible for death were put to death before they were able to kill again.
And they should be put to death. I completely agree. But
And Laura Zario was right to do what he did, by the way.
It's probably right what you're saying, and obviously it is right what you're saying. As Israeli, I cannot argue that. I'm for the death penalty for terrorists, and I don't want to see people with blood on their hands being swapped
right.
in a prisoner swap. But you also said something very right. We're dealing here with a society that worships death,
It's a death cult,
and
plain and simple.
we are worshipping life. And that's what it is. It is not
Difference.
about the land anymore. It is really a spiritual warfare. And it's almost not winnable. And we have to accept it. We have to fight with everything we can.
But we don't have to accept it. We can fight back, and this is why the fight is so important. And I just remember when I was in Israel, I remember being with Ari, and we were reporting on the embassy move, and we were standing on the hill, and we were looking at these reporters just lie to the world about Israel. They were just lying through their teeth, saying that as the Trump administration officials and Republicans and pro-Israel Zionists from all around the world were just in this room, in this ceremony, in Jerusalem, Israel, confirming the new embassy, innocent Palestinian children were being slaughtered and innocent Palestinians were dying and they were being shot and killed by the IDF. Well, it turns out that majority of the people who were shot and killed by the IDF were Hamas terrorists.
Admitted
and the
to by
commander,
Hamas.
Yeah.
admitted to by Hamas, right? And so this is the struggle that the Jewish people and Israel face
And that
on a
Ari
daily
fought
basis.
for.
And this is why our work is so important and why we must continue calling out Islamic terrorism and doing what we do, because we need to just remember Ari and carry on his legacy.
Well, that's what I want to transition into here for a
Yes.
minute. We were finishing up with the dinner we had, that wonderful dinner at the smokehouse.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of meat. We did. We had a little bit of this too. We had a little bit. We knocked off quite a few of these. Ari loved to have a glass of wine, and again, we're here to celebrate his life, to celebrate the amazing things he did, the father he was, the husband he was, the son, the brother. I don't want to talk about that stuff. That tears me up. But we want to have a little toast to our dear friend. Bottle of sterling wine. He was a sterling guy. It's good. This is a good bottle of wine. Nothing but the best. And well, we can maybe we could have done better with the cups. They're little Dixie cups. But
I was going to comment on the
great
cup
sense of
thing.
humor. So what I'd like to do the next few moments before we wrap this up is for you guys to share maybe a lesson that you have learned from his life, or that you can apply to yourself or to others, something that is relevant. But right now to our buddy Ari Fuld. God bless you
To Ali,
and your
may
family.
he rest in peace.
Damon, go ahead. You start us
So
off.
start someone else. Start with someone else, please.
Well, Ari was a fighter, and I think that one of the biggest lessons I learned from Ari was to never back down. Right? No matter how much hate or how much resistance you receive, no matter how many people are in your face screaming at you or telling you that you're wrong, always stand your ground and fight back. And that is something that I know that Ari saw in me, and that's the reason why we bonded, and that's the reason why he liked me, and that's why I will never back down and I'll continue fighting.
I think what's left with me from Ari is, obviously he was a fighter, and we all know that, and we already discussed that, but he was also a very reasonable man. He lived in a city that its own mayor is sort of agreed not to have fences around the city and have access to Arab cities around, and obviously Muslims could walk almost into the city. And when I asked Ari how does he feel about it, because he and I actually know the people that erected the security wall in Jerusalem, and to my knowledge he was very much appreciative of what Jerusalem did with the security wall. And he said, well, different people have different ways, and I think if he didn't agree with the mayor, he certainly didn't make it into a big issue. He felt that there were many, many ways to resolve the problem, and we should seriously look into each one at certain times. I did not agree with the mayor, by the way. I think that we should protect ourselves with security walls, and what's good for Jerusalem is also good for America, by the way. And I think Ari, to me, was in a way a teacher. I'm older, much older than him, but I learned quite a bit, and I'll keep it forever with me.
So he's a fighter who's reasonable. Mark, what lesson can you draw from his life?
I'd like to emphasize the fighter part. And everybody always says, oh, yeah, he went down as a fighter. He's a fighter. No, actually, Ari went down as he had a knife sticking in his heart. And the last 30 seconds of his life was fighting this ideology and fighting the person who did it to him. I mean, that is the quintessential definition of a fighter. I mean, I think Ari, knowing him the way I knew him, it wasn't very great detail, but my overall sense was that he would be proud that the last 30 seconds of his life went down truly fighting. And I know he'd be sad he's gone, but he would be proud of himself the way he reacted in those last 30 seconds of his life. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's an amazing legacy. Damon, you lived there with them. What?
Well, I'll say this. He was a brave guy. You know, he went places that a lot of people would be afraid to go frequently. But the best thing is he, like you, and like when Jane said that, you know, he's like you, is because you both love the truth. There's nothing more important than the truth. And he could not be corrupted to say anything but what he believed, regardless of pressures. You know, he's starting to get a little bit politically active, and, you know, Israeli politics are crazy. Ari would not waver from the facts, the truth. He wouldn't you know, appease. You know, he wouldn't just say, "Oh, you know, you're kind of right," just to avoid. He would do it in a nice way also. But he would make sure that you knew what the facts were, and he wouldn't let the little lies and the manipulations and the big lies of the media. He was just so good at knocking down the opposition's arguments. He was the best at it. You know, on the topics of Israel, Judea, Samaria, religion. I mean, I've seen him debate dozens of people, and they all had to walk away with their tail between their legs.
And you can Google Ari Fuld, F-U-L-D, A-R-I-F-U-L-D, debate. And he did regular debates on TV in Israel. And you can watch them. They're masterful. They're really, really good. I've done a lot of debating. He's excellent. And the lesson that I would draw, and all of us can draw many lessons, but the one for me deals with the concept of truth. I watched his last Torah teaching this morning. He did an 18-minute piece on the transition of leadership from Moses to Joshua, and the guy has studied Torah. He roots his truth in the nature of God and the history of Israel. So he has a rock solid foundation upon which to build his belief system, which then leads to a political system. That's why he's so good. And he was gifted. He had a supernatural gift from God to do all of this stuff.
You know what else was great about him, and you also, are my first trip to Israel, which is, I made Aliyah after my first trip to Israel with Ronnie and you. And what he was also so good at is what was amazing was you could read the Bible that's so old and drive down the road and point out,
Amazing,
this is from this story, this is from that story. And it's like you can't argue, you know, people that say, "Oh, I don't believe in religion, the Bible's this," really? Go touch it and tell me it's not real. When you can touch it, it's real.
That's pretty cool.
And he was excellent, like you, Ronnie, at being able to point out the historical truths of the Jewish religion.
There you go, guys. All right, let's wrap this up with back to the smokehouse. We're back at the meat house and having a wonderful time. It was really a lovely evening.
Yeah, it really was.
Fabulous evening. I think there were 12 of us. And then Ari, at the end of the evening, says, "Okay," it was a Thursday.
Who wants to go on an adventure?
Who wants to go on an adventure to the Muslim world behind where nobody ever goes? And everybody goes, "Well, Laura goes, I'll go, Ari, I'll go." Alan Corman goes, I'll go. Max from France, our buddy, was there. I'll go. And I think
I chickened out.
Also a holiday,
I chickened
too.
out.
It was
What?
I chickened out.
Mark chickened out. I had some other stuff to do. But he literally was going to, well, you're going to tell the story briefly. He was going to take everybody into the Arab area, the Arab quarter,
by the hotel.
at night, 12 o'clock at night. But this guy was fearless. I think we all can agree. He was absolutely fearless. He had his 9mm that he pulled out and shot at that guy. But that, even if he didn't have it, he says fearless with or without a weapon.
Right.
Tell us what happened that evening.
Well, we were at the smokehouse and we were talking about, things that we wanted to do, things that we couldn't really do on the tour because a lot of other people were, too nervous
And they're dangerous.
to do. And they're dangerous, right? Like Ari was actually supposed to take me to the Gaza border on Friday, and we were going to go and we were going to film, and he was actually talking to some of his friends in the IDF to arrange for us to get an escort. But there was a change of plans, something happened, and he couldn't go. But we ended up that night, it was midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, he takes us to the hotel, and then he goes, all right, well, we're going to go here, we're going to go to the Arab Quarter, and I'm going to show you places that nobody gets to see, right? You see the wall here, but what if I told you there was another part? So he takes us inside, and we're walking through, and the thing that's really eerie to me is as we were walking, he was pointing out different locations where other innocent Jews had been stabbed to death by terrorists. So when I found out that he was stabbed, that's the first thing that came to my mind is that night when I was walking with him. And a couple years ago, maybe it was even last year, there was a rabbi and his wife, and they were walking in this Arab Quarter, and they were stabbed. And not a single person ran to help them because there was all Muslims, and nobody helped them. And you had this rabbi and his wife, they were stabbed. The rabbi died. I think his wife actually survived. And the Muslims, Ari was telling me the story, none of them did a single thing. Nobody helped them. This rabbi just died on the ground, bled out, was stabbed in the neck. His wife brutally stabbed as well, and nobody helped. And I just couldn't help but think about Ari and what it was like for him, and I was just thinking, well, I hope somebody helped him, because the first thing that went through my mind is when he said, now watch your back, because they like to stab people in the back and in the neck. And he told me I was going to be safe when I was walking with him, and I'm not going to lie, I mean, I don't really get nervous, but it was not a very pleasant situation, right? Walking there, seeing all these young Muslim men staring at us, and we were the only people there. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning inside the only Jews there, at least. And it's just very eerie, the things like Mark said that you remember, because he did say they will come up behind you and stab you in the neck or stab you in the back. And I remember just thinking to myself, and I constantly kept looking over my back, and he had a gun on him, of course, and I felt safe, but that's what happened to him. They came up behind him and stabbed him in the back and the lung. And
Mark's point was very well taken earlier.
I'll just never forget it, you know, and I'll just never forget what he said. And he was telling me stories about how, you know, sometimes when he's gone to the hotel, you see he's had Muslims throw rocks at him from the other side. And, you know, it wasn't a place where people really wanted to go. I mean, like you said yourself, our group of people, very brave people who take risks every single day, and they're professionals in this matter, and even they were too scared to go.
Sure.
And
but that was Ari. All right. Well, let's draw this together here. I think the lesson, one of the key lessons, as we honor and give tribute to Ari and continue to pray and help in any way possible his family, that unique event he had in 2006 where he went to pull fallen soldiers and the mortar hit where he was, which would have killed him. That was an existential moment, existential crisis in his life, where he saw that, hey man, I don't know how much more time I have, but I got to use every single moment of it efficiently and properly to do the right thing, which is to argue for what we spoke about earlier, the truth. So his decision was under that tree in 2006 to be even more committed to the principles of God and family and country. I think for those of us that were close to him, maybe that's the lesson that we pull out of this, that seeing him fall down, and if you watch that video, very difficult to see him stumbling in death as he fought the lion, Ari. I think that's a lesson we all can pull out of it, that we have no idea how much time God has given us on this earth, and to maximize every single moment for the truth is indeed a lesson we can learn from our dear friend Ari Fuld. Once again, to Ari.
To Ari.
And his great family.
יסקבר קרי לעמוד בבויקר יסקבר קרי לבוא דס בוירו Defender of Zion will stop like a lion. Yiskamekani, defender of Zion, lived his life like a lion. than you and me.